A very warm welcome to the Creative Dealmaker podcast. I'm Carl Allen, I'm your host, and I'm going to be interviewing expert guests sharing investor strategies that will completely and utterly disrupt the market when it comes to buying and selling businesses all over the world.
When you first become a seller of a company and you learn a lot of lessons on the sell side, you're able to translate those lessons into being a more sophisticated buyer. And I think part of that is understanding the process. And
Right.
the other part of that is learning to live with the emotional psychology that you go through on a deal, whether you're a buyer or a seller, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So once I got, through that and I came to Florida, I kind of got sucked right back into the construction industry because it's what I knew. Right. So, I happened to meet a decorator at a party I was invited to the first week I was here. And next thing you know, I'm working along A1A and all the multi-million-dollar homes on the beach. And, I was fortunate again to start building, another company with hiring employees. But then something magical happened in, 1999. It was, we were expecting our first child in 2000. And
Wow.
I started to question my life choices, right? I started to say, well, I don't want to work 7 days a week. Right. I was like, what could I do differently? Because I'm in the day to day. I'm trying to figure this out. What was interesting is I had a client at the time. The guy had like a $400 million exit. It was a big construction company he sold in the Midwest. And I just would always get friendly. Like call it podcasting before podcasting was a thing. Like I would always just get to know the clients and really just like everybody was going with their hand out to get their checks to get paid. I was going just asking for insights of like, how did you get where where you're at today? And these guys would, they'd call me up and say, hey, can you go pick up my Bentley and pick me up at the airport and let's go have dinner. Right. So I get to spend time with these guys. Right. And one of the things this guy told me, I said, what would you do differently? And he said, I would give it all back if I can get my son back. Because his 30-year-old son died of alcoholism because while he was building this massive empire, he wasn't home, right? He wasn't part of the kid's life, right? And so I, kind of really struck me. And I was like, okay, doesn't mean you need to live like a pauper's life, right? but like what could I do differently, right? And so I started playing around online and I kind of fell into the affiliate marketing world. That's how I got into the internet marketing world.
Yeah.
And, and that's where it started. I started that journey into, internet marketing, lead generation. Then eventually, was the backbone behind a personal development company for 10 years with partners and, left that in 2011. And then had a few different types of ventures that I was in, in the financial services industry, just taking my marketing experience and, trying to figure out like, what's the next thing I'm going to be involved in.
Yeah. Interesting, right? So you've had like a big construction, home services type background. And then really for the last 20 years, I'm guessing you've really kind of delved into the marketing world. And I know that marketing is like anything marketing related is really your kind of buy box. So let's start to talk about some of the deals that you've done. I know you just closed on a really big agency deal. I've seen a number of your other acquisitions that you've done. I think you did an e-com brand in the sports world, which, big kind of like big thing of marketing. Like, even though I'm a Brit, I'm crazy about basketball. It's like my thing. It always has been. But yeah, let's talk about some of the deals that you've done and how you actually did them.
Yeah. So, so with the sports e-com store, that was an interesting deal because the guy had bought it and just kind of, did what some people do. They don't really know how to run it. Right. And, got distracted with another project. And, at the time that business was doing about, 1.3, 1.4 a year. And then he let it slowly dwindle. Right. And then stopped running traffic. Right. And then was trying to sell it for $250,000 to get his money back out of it. And I just kind of let it sit. And I was like, dude, it's not really worth anything. Right. It's like, aside from the sports vendor relationships, right, and the database, that's really, the only value. So finally, just through another partner of mine, we were on a conversation with him one day, and he's, just like 4 months in of different conversations throughout the time. And I just get on a Zoom and I just asked him, I said, what do you really want? Like, what would make this a win for you? And he said, I'm just tired. Like, I just want to be done with it. I'm tired of paying for all Shopify and paying for all these fees. He's like, if I can get 10 grand for it, I'd be happy. Right.
Wow.
And I was like,
$250,000 to 10 grand.
yeah. So I said, done, I'll get my attorney to draw up the paperwork and we'll handle that. Right. So that was the first deal, right. That got over the line. And, when I look at that, is like, I was watching all these different things out there in the marketing space. And, obviously your famous words are, you should make a t-shirt for this one too, is stay in your lane. Right.
Stay in your lane.
I was like, yeah. Cause I was trying to, like, when I started this journey with you, is like, I had a coffee company under contract. Right. I had, everything but marketing company. Right. Cause I was trying to avoid, doing it. But ultimately, through what I started in with the coaching business that I hired an agency, and for the first time, and it's like kind of like hiring a painting contractor for me. It's like very painful, right, to let somebody else do that work, because I'm, kind of a little bit of a stickler with that kind of stuff. So I was like watching what was this agency was doing, and I said, probably about 3 months in, I was like, dude, like, this is a friend of mine, very high profile in the internet marketing industry. I said, dude, if I didn't know you, I would have fired you month one, right? I was like, I love you as a friend. I said, but you suck as an agency, right? I was like, so what it did though for me was it drove me to say, okay, I'm going to go fix my problem, right? Yeah. I'm going to go acquire an agency, right? And that's what I did. It was like, I literally pulled a list, did the direct mail thing, which I resisted because I'm a paid ads guy. And I was like, I'll just run paid ads, right? And I was like, all right, I'm just going to do what Carl says, send letters, see what happens, right? And I just happened to catch the guy, for this business that, just happened to be perfect scenario where, it was checked out, 3 years. Number two guy was already running the day-to-day, had all the makings of, the ideal buy box for me, and was able to get that deal over the line over the course of several months.